And over to you, Howard. Enjoy.
Great, Debs, thanks very much. If you wouldn't mind just keeping an eye out on the other screen. I've really just got one screen in the hotel room, so it's hard for me to see on the other side. And please just interrupt me if I'm not answering or responding to anybody.
Yeah.
Thanks. Welcome. Great to see everybody. I see quite a few people here. It's lovely to see you guys. I've been in Saudi for the last 2 weeks, and I'll be flying home tonight or tomorrow morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I finished my last training afternoon, and this is the last session for the week. So great, reference and master data. And as Debbie was saying, this is for the data professional. Now, I want to start off, it's one of those areas where I think I have almost about 50 slides or more for today. And I'm certainly not going to make it all. So I've had to cut out a lot. But I'll try to share with you what I can, if I can make it. And we'll be talking about the data models. What are the sort of principles of data modeling? So many times I've been teaching data modeling and say, well, you know what, we must realize that the data models are different depending on what you're going to model. And so the data models for reference data, the data models for master data, there's a set of principles that almost govern these areas. And so that's where we're going to focus on today. And then the relationships with other knowledge areas. And this one took me forever. And there's all sorts of links to everybody. It's a little bit like data governance, where you're involved in everything. You need support from everybody. And it's quite scary sometimes to think on how to do this. I then also got quite an interesting discussion on incremental plan to ensure success, and this is a bit of a radical approach that one can apply, and it's almost trying to get your first iteration of reference and master data up and running and producing value. Okay, so I think there's quite a lot to talk about there in terms of why and how, and how do we justify these things. And as part of that, we'll talk about the difference between operational versus analytical master data management. Okay, great. And then next week we'll be talking about using the data executive, and we'll be focusing on the business case and the business ROI. Great. So in the last 2 weeks, we've gone through the DMBOK, the main chapter, the key points from a data management, from a data manager point of view, a readiness assessment, and the decision mandates that basically the manager needs to apply and ensure, or the program lead of reference and master data needs to ensure that the right people are making the right decisions at the right time. And then we spoke about data stewardship, and this has certainly been my experience that it's a very hard sell in the beginning, because it's almost as if IT is trying to move all of their work to the business people. So cleaning of the data, fixing, matching, those type of things. When it looks at it, it's almost like the data stewards are going to be saying, why should I clean all these addresses? You guys can clean them. You can write a program and clean everything. And it doesn't always work. I've been in several situations where I've had not 2, 3, 4 different rows. I've had, in some cases, 18 different rows of the same customer, and I have no way of telling which row, which column is the golden value. I just can't work it out. There's no fancy piece of code that's going to be doing that. So without their support and without their involvement, it's a tricky scenario that you sit in. And then we're going to be talking about a data professional and then the data executive next week. So, and please, if you have any questions, if you don't feel comfortable with what I may have shared, and I am going to be challenging you. I'm going to be tackling certain areas that you may think are crucial or key success areas, and it's also challenged me. So I've been listening to certain people and making certain recommendations on how to do things, and so I've had to spend some time thinking about it as well. Okay, so data models. These are the three areas: data models, other knowledge areas, and then rollout plan. And I'm including the discussion of analytical or operational versus analytical MDM in that incremental rollout. It's so crucial in terms of getting success. So I'll discuss it in that area. So let's start off with data models, reference and master data. And this is for architect and modeler. And so I've spent a bit of time looking at the reference data modeling principles. And the first thing I've done over the years, I've been working as a DBA, and I go into an application, I go into a database for an organization, and when I look at the tables, I almost have no way of understanding, is this a reference data? Is it a code table? Is it a master data table? Is it a transaction table? So when I look at the tables, there's no clue. And I'm always surprised that people don't make use of the schema. So database.schema dot table name. And I started doing that maybe about 8 years ago, where I had basically three important schemas, being the reference data dot, the master data dot, and the transactions or business process, basically. So that's something that stood me in good stead. I've been able to go into any database or anything and understand where my reference data tables are. There's also been lots of discussions as to whether I should have all of the code tables, and I call them code decode, because you'll see a code that sort of makes sense, and then you'll see a description. And should we put all of those tables into one table? Because I can see hundreds and hundreds of these reference data tables, and sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't make sense, especially when you are associating foreign keys to a single table that contains many code tables. And what I find helpful is having a unique ID for every single code in the system. So every code for every reference data product. So you can see, I also believe that we need to build what's called a reference data product registry, so we can find out, well, is it a country code? Is it an enum for an application, a gender, or whatever it is? Where is that list? And we should have all the associative metadata. So, for example, who provides this reference data set? What's the version number? What's our name? What's their name? Who's the provider? When was it last updated? All of those things are pretty critical when it comes to a reference data environment. Okay, now I'm hoping, if you've bought and you have a master data system, then typically they come with reference data management. Okay, Debs, you handling that. Thanks. They come with a reference data environment that they can import the data and manage it. This would be if you were to do your own model for reference data tables. And then what I'd like to do is to say the next set of important steps is almost, if I have, I call it model by source. So if it's external, then you'll typically have the model that the external person has modeled the data set. Okay. So if it's ISO, you would want to stick to the ISO layouts, and they can differ quite radically. If it's anybody else, EStat, Eurostat, whatever it is, they also have their own layout. So you tend to use it as it is. You'd import it, and you wouldn't want to be playing around with too many different changes because you'd like to keep it as you get it from that external provider. And then there's an internal approach, and then I saying when you basically my approach is to model by type. Okay, and then that goes to the next principle where I have a set of one table for all the code decode type tables, and one table for one designed for taxonomies, and one designed for ontologies. Okay, so you're almost doing a meta model of ontologies and a meta model of taxonomies, if that makes sense. Uh, and then what you'll see here as well is there are so many different layouts, and here you can see just the ISO 3166 code tables, and there's all the different code tables. These are the short names, and this is for currency code, and then this is for a population table. And I've got quite a lot of references to find data sets, open data sets. Also remember, if you're getting the data from somewhere else, even though it may look like master data or location data, it becomes reference data within your organization. All right. So there is this is another facility. It's called Data Set Search by Google. This is what it looks like. You can search for anything. That's pretty awesome. And then there's Data Hub, and then there's also this website, which is there's the 10 great places to find open data sets. Okay, so here's an example of all of the different areas. And we've got Google Dataset, we've got Kaggle, data.gov, datahub.io, UCI machine learning repository. So all sorts of data that you've ever thought of, you can find it over here. Okay. Now, the other thing that I've done is, I'm sure many of you know a really great guy from a master data point of view. His name is Malcolm Chisholm. Some time back, he released a set of code tables that he was working on, and he put it into Airtable. And I've used that Airtable to connect Power BI to that Airtable. And these are some of the areas, some of the things. So there's 42 in health, 37 in economy, unit of measure tables, language, environment. And I think there was a total of 240 something. And this is Malcolm and I, we were working together building Power BI, ESTAT, URL. So what we wanted to do was make sure that every single code table has a URL that people can go and find it. And that was quite an interesting exercise on looking at code tables. Now, this I believe is almost one of the starting points for you as an organization when you're setting up reference and master data to have a strong set of reference data tables, so that whenever you come to a master data model and a column has a finite set of values, then you should be applying a reference data set. So you'd want to get as many of these reference data products as possible and allow the people to use it whenever necessary. Here's one. I got to have it for this. I got to do it for this. And not to have to go and have a special request. Please, can you find me a reference data table for this and this and this and this? I think that takes a long time, and it's certainly, I feel, a waste of time. Okay. All right, so that was reference data. Master data, I believe, my view is that when it comes to master data, we should be starting with the enterprise data model. So that's the data architect should have been working on the enterprise data model and have built many standardized layouts for the entire organization. And that almost gives so almost this is your second round. So there's been work done at the enterprise data model level, and then you will then probably take some of that and implement the first increment of a master data domain or area that you're working on. I hope that makes sense. So I'm sure you can see immediately that you are inextricably linked to the data architect and the enterprise data model, which most data modelers should be. They should be getting their starting point from the enterprise data model. But we do know that lots of companies don't have a, a enterprise data model. And yes, what we certainly like to do is the enterprise data model. I think Veronica made that comment is it does identify the data subject areas. Okay, so this is the schema that I use, same as my reference data. The difference between master data and reference data is I add an extra element. So it goes database.masterdata.subject area.table name, XXX. Okay, so that's any area that you're dealing with. Now that may, as an example, be master data.party. Okay. Um, now I've seen people get into trouble when they don't use enough abstraction, and then all of a sudden um, we start having business concepts that are across multiple subject areas, and we start arguing about who's responsible for defining an address. It's in customer, it's in vendor, it's employee. Who now defines that address? And we have certain challenges that come out of being too low or too finite in our abstraction. So the use of abstraction, remember when we do data modeling, we actually use Steve Hoberman's abstraction safety guide. And you have to go through quite a bit of justification that you're going to get value out of the abstraction. But I think when it comes to master data, you need to really need to consider it. And there's a bit of work that I've been doing on master data for data privacy, your data subjects. Okay, so that is including your employees, it can include your vendors, it can include your customers, it can include contacts or suppliers. So there are so many different areas that have to come together to represent individuals and entities that are interacting with you. Okay. And yes, entity in itself is not part of data privacy, but all of the people and the contacts for that entity become appropriate for data privacy. So then I talk about the next step is order by field type, right? So focus on getting your identifying data first, your identifying model. Now, we spoke about this last week where we said, well, what does that identifier look like? When I do data modeling, what does an identifier look like? Well, part of the first step of an identifier is the business key or the natural key for the entity that we're going to do entity resolution on. So why is it the candidate key slash alternate key? Because that will ensure that you get a single match coming back. Okay. Now we know that a lot of the times with master data, getting a single match is not easy and you shouldn't restrict yourself to forcing a single match. You may need to add other attributes to the identifier to help you discern the differences. So you may add things like addresses or gender or things like that you probably wouldn't be doing in a business key. Because a lot of times in your entity table, you may have a code, customer ID, customer code, and also very helpful when you go into Data Vault. So these are the field types: identifier, and then core, almost what's part of your golden record, and then all would be what's part of your golden profile. So it would be identifiers, record, and profile, where you have all of the data that we have mastered for an entity. Okay. And then the next set of important decisions is by implementation style. So depending on what implementation style you're going to take, for example, if you're going to go with registry, all you need to worry about is the identifier and the pointer to the source system. Okay, you don't need to go much further than that because it's actually not, it's leaving the data in the source systems and it's a pointer to the source system. So you don't need anything more. If you central, then or virtual, I would suggest that you focus on the enterprise data model. Okay. So here is just that sort of challenge that I was talking about. So there's a registry implementation, and that's got the identifiers, and then we've got hybrid, which has got the core, and there's some examples of the identifier for a customer or a membership table. And then with a hub or repository where we centralize everything, then we're going to have all the data. We're going to have all of the information that we know about it. And this was a diagram that we went some time back. And what I wanted to show you here is that there is a statement in the DMBOK that says all master data by definition are critical data elements. Okay, so by definition, all master data is, but I believe there are some uh, master elements that are more critical than others. Your identifier, that's really going to determine your ability to identify and match when you have collisions or whatever it is, you want to be able to do that matching. Okay, and then your core and then your all. Okay. So remember, all reference and master data fields are critical. Identifiers are the highest, the core second highest, and then all is critical as per the DMBOK definition. All right, so that's around data modeling. No questions at this stage. Okay, so moving on to other knowledge areas. Here we can see so how do we map ourselves and our dependencies to the other knowledge areas? That's what I was doing here, and I found it to be very valuable in trying to understand everything, all my interactions, what some of my team should look like, when do I talk to who, and how do I build this entire system. Now, there are two statements in the DMBOK, and the first statement is that really master data or master data and reference data is about data integration, data sharing, and that's where you're focusing on. But at the same time, data quality is critical. So those two are really important. But without the architecture and defining the way in which your master data hub, what it's going to look like, your implementation styles, your data sharing, you're also in trouble. So your architect's a great role. Governance without the stewards and principles and policies, you're in trouble. Data warehousing will want to use it. Okay, data warehousing really enjoys, and I've had that experience of just having so much weight lifted off my shoulders in terms of hierarchy definition that are not in applications, but they are in the warehouse, and that I can use the master data environment to help me build my hierarchies. Sure, I remember all the coding I had to do to get these hierarchies across different areas. It was hectic, and I kept on asking, well, like, why doesn't the business do this? Why am I always doing this coding? And then we got security and privacy. Okay, all right. So here are the knowledge areas that I've just broken them up. Now, what I've done is I've chosen to break them up according to the life cycle. So this should, I mean, it's not planning, it's plan, design, create and obtain, store, use, enhance, and dispose. Okay, so there we have those areas over there. Okay, so plan. So here's how master data and reference data is dependent on data governance. Okay, so there's the business case that they should be doing. It should be part of the data strategy. I keep saying a lot of times is build a small data strategy with a set of use cases. that you can execute on. That's going to take you 100 days, around about 100 days. That's sort of where you want to be. So data governance should be, of course, they build a use case portfolio of 100, 120 use cases. We then do a commercial feasibility and we understand which one is going to deliver more value, and then we go after those. Okay, and then depending on who's going to deliver that, we may need master data to come in. Okay, and then we've got the P3T, principles, policies, implementation framework, procedures, and reference architecture. Now, that is done with the data architect. So the data governance would provide business requirements, and the data architect would say, okay, using these business requirements and understanding the knowledge area and its technology requirements, it would create a reference architecture. Then we have the operating model, ownership, stewardship, decision mandates. Again, very helpful for master data. You would like to have this all set up before you start trying to do things. Otherwise, if you tackle this thing on your own, you're going to need to do it. Okay. Now that gets a bit tricky. And there may be some shortcuts that you take to get the first one going. Then we have the business glossary. And again, so important to have a definition of every single core business concept and their relationships. You don't want to be arguing at that stage when you want to standardize what the definition is. Okay, so if you've got an enterprise data model, then a lot of those debates should have been had already, but you may need to go through it. Then we have the data architect. They would have subject area models. They would have an enterprise data model, and I just bring the subject area model out. I know it's part of the EDM or the enterprise data model, but I bring it out because that's almost a high-level view of what domains and what capabilities we require. And we can see reference data and master data components. I'm going to look at that. And then a sharing architecture. So there's three important ones. There's your services and components as an architecture. There's your hub or implementation style, and then there's your sharing architecture. How do we distribute this data? How do we then also harmonize with the operations or the applications that have presented and need to be sorted out? Then we've got data quality expectations. For data quality, data source trust. Which data sources do we trust? And do we bring everything in? And what are the rules on defining that level of trust? So that we can allocate this system of record, or some people refer to it as SOR, to a data set, to a source, and then it may be only certain columns within that data source. Okay. And then, of course, it's this whole golden value, golden record, golden profiles, the matching, the entity resolution, survivorship. That's where we bring data quality into play. Okay, to achieve that golden value. So here's the typical MDM capabilities. I want to just share this with you. Of course, at the bottom, we have operational management. How do we manage this environment? That includes the stewardship processes. Then we bring the data in. So you can see here's data integration and acquisition. So the first thing, discover the data sources with the trust and do the appropriate intake. Then it's the idea of consolidating. So this is almost sounding like an enterprise data warehouse, okay, where you bring all the data together and you consolidate it. And then we do the data quality check before we load the data into the data hub. Okay, so this is the master data hub, and these are all the elements that we have to take care of in the master data hub. The architecture, the data model, the reference data, the metadata management, the business rules, the hierarchy, and then the repository itself where the data is kept. And that's typically part of data storage and operations. Then the services that we will provide to our downstream partners. What sort of services do we provide? For example, versioning. For example, slowly changing dimensions. We need to be able to support the data warehouse and the BI with slowly changing dimensions. Access control, and then a data delivery area that's distributing the data. Now, I'm hoping you can see here that there's two sides to it. It would need to support an operational MDM, which means that I need to keep my applications up to date. I'm harmonizing and standardizing across my applications. And then I've also got an analytical MDM, which we now are going to the data warehouse and the BI. And then we've got certain hierarchies in that. So this is data delivery and data synchronization. And in here, I want to show you the next slide, and this is from Informatica. Informatica is really doing extremely well in this area. And there we can see examples. There's the different types of data sources that it supports. Unstructured data, that's quite amazing to work with unstructured data in reference and master data. Cloud, external data, that's the Malcolm Chisholm code tables type of thing. And then it comes into the data lake or data warehouse, where this data, as it's coming in or is ingested in the lake, it's also being connected to the master data. Okay. So I keep telling people the data lake, when they do that integration step, remember that's ELT, so it's extract from source, load it in as quickly as possible, and then do the transform. They should be connecting to the master data system to ensure that this video, this image, this comment on X or Twitter relates to us. It's about us. It's not about my competitor, because if you start collecting data about your competitor, you're getting into dangerous property, dangerous ground, and you need to be careful of that. So this is all this integration. Now, there's some really powerful stuff here in terms of tokenization. How do I do the match? And you'd almost create a token per entity, and then you want this match, and then maybe you've got 2 or 3 or 4 or many more, and you'll work through this area. So just a whole lot of stuff that Informatica is support it's giving us. And it's interesting, they call it 360s, right? So whether it's 360s of customer, product, any domain, contracts, it's basically saying that I have, or I'm aiming for a 360 of the domain that I'm in. So I'm aiming for all information about a customer, all information about a product, a contract, finance, whatever it is. This is what the 360s are. And this is a lot of the times, this takes some time to develop, right? So yes, your vision is 360, but you may start off with a 45 degree, and then maybe a 90 degree, and you're going to creep up to a 360. You're not going to go for it in the beginning. You'll probably lose out. And then Informatica calls this reverse ETL. Okay, now that's keeping everybody else up to date. And here we can see the reverse ETL, sales applications, marketing. And marketing, I've got something called CDP, which is Customer Data Platform. And that's all about the customer behavior. And so master data, the responsibility of master data customer domain would be accuracy. The responsibility in the marketing customer data platform will be understanding their behavior and how they respond to campaigns and things like that. So we have to be clear that what these different applications are doing. Please don't set up your CDP as your customer master data. There's some challenges there. Service applications, data warehouse, and there we go. So that's Informatica's view of how they put everything together. They've got API calls that the cloud can call in. They can go from external people. They can even have this from a data privacy point of view, where data subjects can come in here and look at what data we have about them. So that's something that causes lots of people, lots of organizations, lots of pain in terms of being able to consolidate all the data for their subjects. Okay. All right, so here's just a brief view. I'm going to jump over this quickly. And the main message here is to say, please, the centralized hub is not the only way. And the centralized hub can take a long time to establish. So here we have a synchronized master. Everybody's up to date, and it's just almost replication. Okay, then we have a synchronization for a specific application. You choose the ERP and then you synchronize to the CRM and to the legacy. So typically, the ERP is the master. And then we have a hub-based master. That's that centralized environment. And then we have an industry-specific master. So this is the ISO standard 25500, and it's called Know Your Supplier. And it has all global IDs for every single supplier around the world. They can load up their products, they can get product codes, and you would get this information from that industry-specific master. And that Pylog does a fantastic job on doing that for the industry, the product industry. And then we've got real-time data movement using an ESB or a service bus that keeps sending all of the changes to everybody. And then we've got this data virtualization. Okay. And when you query the master data, it goes and get the results from packages, databases, files, XML, and it brings it up into this area. Now, in this situation, you're not going to have that sort of golden value. All right. This is almost about getting a prototype up and running for your data model. Which data model is going to work, and what is the data source trust levels across these different areas. So virtualization is really good to get the system up and running. And there's the DMBOK sharing architecture. So I can have a main master data hub with local hubs, and then they support local data warehouses by department or by region. Area to share with external parties, then the enterprise data warehouse. So one also needs to understand now how this sharing is going to happen. That's different to the implementation style. Okay, lots of people get those two different things confused. Design and enable. So we've spoken about the schemes, the relational model, the dimensional model, and I've seen a lot of growth lately on using Data Vault because of its ability to have the core entity, the core business concept, and then a code for that core business concept. And then it has a whole lot of satellite data, and there's a satellite table per source system, which is really nice. So you can bring it into this area. It's almost the start of your data vault. You can then be doing a quality assessment in that area, and you don't have to do a quality assessment in the application. So it's almost like a direct load. You take the customer table and you load it from this source in, and then you use the data vault concept to bring that thing in. And data vault's also very dependent. That core business concept code is dependent on the identifier in the staging area. And then there's also lots of work being done on transforming or implementing that central hub in a knowledge graph. Okay, so a knowledge graph is very good for data integration across multiple disparate sources. The GNOME project actually demonstrated how we could bring data from many different areas and have a constant form of integration. Metadata. What's our data catalog, our data product catalog, reference data products, master data products. Okay, and then we've got a system of record catalog, data discovery, data trust, and then we assign trust rules, trust scores, and then this also comes into data provenance. Document and content, that's that unstructured data, but it's also document and content talks about controlled vocabularies, taxonomies, and ontologies. Now, ontologies are required by the knowledge graph. Okay, and then we have a bridge. So how do we create a bridge between our data subjects and all the unstructured documents that relate to them? So that's becoming more and more important, where where a user can come in and they can look at everything from their contracts to whatever documents we have about them. They'll be able to see it and challenge it if necessary. Okay, then we have create and obtain. There's data development and data integration. That's bringing data in, and these are the different things. And I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to go through all of them. Reverse ETL is used for harmonization. Okay, so that's getting the whole environment harmonized and everyone standardized. Okay, now that one takes forever. There's lots of challenges. Sometimes you can't harmonize. There's no ways you're going to be able to harmonize SAP as an example. You may be able to send it data, but it's not going to change and standardize according to your format. It won't change its data model. And then you've also got business processes that may change. If you shipping data back to them and overriding their data, then we could have some interesting problems that happen there as well. So that is a nice thing. We would like to get there, but beware of the politics and the challenges you face when pushing back into applications. And then the data sharing architecture that's used to bring data in and then share data out. Remember, we saw the external parties. We had a whole lot of different areas. And then the store. Okay, how do we store the data? So certainly if the implementation is a central hub, we've got lots of storage issues that we've got to deal with. Do we go with knowledge graph? Do we go with relational databases because it can enforce the rules? Which approach do we take? Do we go with some level of data vault for staging? And we need to think all of those things through and have that understanding. Virtualization, that's pretty nice. We don't really have to worry about a lot of these things. And then registry is also pretty simple from that point of view because you're really just storing the identifier and a pointer to the system. Data sharing, federated and replicated communication. News. Okay, here we get into our data warehouse, and there you can see lots of that data vault coming in here. If you read Hans Holtgren's book on data vault, you'll see how they have applied it very well, using the data vault as a starting point for master data to bring it in, and then also then downstream on that. Data marts. So here we have to support those conform dimensions. So we should be responsible, or the reference and master data should be responsible for managing the conform dimensions, the slowly changing aspects to it, the navigation hierarchies. That should be done, and we should be integrating between ourselves and the data marts. It should be coming from the master data environment and the reference data because it's got reference data elements there as well. Business intelligence, the reference data and master data gallery of all of our important resources. So if you're going self-service, we should be providing a set of Power BI templates or Click templates that have our master data involved. And what I did this once for one organization, and I had so much fun being able to count my customers and count my products and locations and just having an understanding of what's happening, where are these customers located, all that sort of stuff. It was amazing using master data tables as fact tables as well. That was quite interesting. And then master data DQ dashboard and trend analysis. And then we have data security, the access control, the data sharing requests, the data risk on PII and SPI. So we have to be careful here now as well as that you're going to have to classify all of the data elements in your master data according to the classification. You're going to then have to choose a data protection technique. Is it masking? Is it permanent masking? Is it dynamic masking? Is it encryption? What do we do? And then, of course, the identifiers start getting challenging because a lot of that is PII. Okay, so now I'm straddling over this one, and we got some challenges. Enhance, that's that last step with the data science on enrichment of customer information that we can get from the knowledge graph, the behavior, the patterns that we can be storing back into the master data system. And then knowledge graph using that and trying to pick up relationship discovery. Now, in the DMBOK, it talks a lot about affiliation management, parent-child, or who are the owners of these companies and how many companies do they own and how many boards do they sit on. That's what we refer to as affiliation management. and you want to have that available to you within the master data system. Also with products where you've got substitute products, these do the same, and then you're getting a lot more integration functionality with an ontology in the knowledge graph and dispose. So this is all about know your entity, know your customer, know your supplier, know your data subjects. And this is a great role for master data to play in. And when I saw Informatica do this the first time, it must have been about 5, 6 years ago to help the GDPR, and they brought everything together. This was like, wow, what a fantastic way of applying master data to a challenge that we have. That's the one that keeps the accurate and reliable definition. Okay, I've got 5 minutes to go, and I'm thinking I'm running out of time dramatically. So I wanted to take you through this. This is someone, Malcolm Hawker, spoke about a maniacal approach to delivering the first version of master data in 90 days. And I'm going to, if we don't finish, that's okay. I'm just going to try to show you what his thinking is. So he talks about, well, a readiness assessment. This is your first debate. Do I go operational, analytic? And he's very clear. You have to be super focused on this, and trying to take on operational at this point with those harmonization issues I was sharing just now and integration. He said, you got to be crazy. Easiest place to start, get it done. If you want to deliver in 90 days, you got to get it done. Yes, when you've achieved success, when the business buy in, when you've convinced the business, then you start taking on those higher level challenges that you may want to do. So I'm going to go through these quickly and try to get to what Malcolm is saying, but he focuses just like I do. What's the business case? What's the value are we going to build? And this is from Gartner, or this is from McKinsey, sorry. And he's saying when you build a business case, it's about understanding the functional leader that needs to get something right. He needs to have an uptick in marketing, in engagement. He needs an uptick in sales. They need an uptick in analytics, regulation, something. Something is there that's going to be the driver. So don't underestimate the importance of getting a right business case to justify your master data. Don't leave it out. Even though you're going to do it in 90 days, do not leave this out, because you want to then choose which is the stakeholder that I'm going to choose now and deliver 1 or 2 KPIs. I'm going to make a small percentage increase of sales. Here, for example, better cross and upselling. If I can get a 5% increase, what's the value back to the business? Business like that, right? That's the way in which you're going to get this thing over the line. And there's a playbook. We'll talk about it a lot in the executive. These are just some of the places that you need to take care of when you're starting. Going portfolio or program versus project. Reference and master data is a function. It's a program. Okay, so one project at a time. You have to be careful. If you continue to do projects just with quick one, you don't spend the effort creating a whole lot of alternate foundations that you need. Okay, so this is the debate of analytical versus operational. Now, the way I've done this is, again, to use the life cycle. And I did it once for an executive to say, if I look at this life cycle, starting from plan, data governance, data architecture, and these are the people that really suffer because they always say, you're wasting time, and we're not getting the job done. And then this is data modeling. Oh, shucks, I've got to switch power. Sorry about that. Okay, so Debs, if you can just tell me, I can't see it now. So this is what I've done, and unfortunately, the only time that you're getting business value is use and enhance. That's the only time. Okay, so other than that, it's just paying money. The business is just funding you to get to this point. Now, so this is This is plan, design, and create. This is common reference data and master data. Both whether you analytical or operational, you have to do this. Everyone pays for that. Then we have good value coming in, getting the data in and storing it. We have better value when we start to use it. That's our BI. And we have the best value when we start to understand the patterns and enhancing the data. Okay, so when I look at operational master data, it's working at these areas. This is where the focus is for operational, because it's coming back to the applications, the other places that store the data. Okay, when I look at analytical, it's these two areas, and I'm getting my best and my better. Okay, so the recommendation is start with analytical, less politics, less updates, less getting all of these applications in sync, and you can be extremely focused in analytical. Okay, you don't have to deal with every single source. You really just have to deal with, oh, I want to do cross-selling, and I just need the 45 degrees required to do cross-selling. I don't need the 360. I don't need every aspect that needs to be updated. Okay, so this is basically the principles that he applies. Notice, limit your scope. Start with analytical, justify with a business case. Make sure you've got the right stakeholder. Make sure you've got the right incentivized. What percentage increase, what KPI, what business KPI are you going to change by 5 or 10%? And then be agile, manage the scope, and fund and justify and fund the agreed value for reference and master data. So we've spoken about it. We've spoken about the previous one. And then here's a big challenge of if you're going to start off trying to build a domain, you go into all of this stuff where it's discover all the data for the domain, catalog all the data, model, glossary, profile, assess. You're running out of time, right? You're not going to get your first iteration done on 90 days when you look at a domain. So the idea is stop with the domain in the beginning. You will bring multiple domains together. You'll bring the data sets together or the areas together in the design on the data model, but start delivering for a business process. Which business process is battling, and how do I deliver for that one? Okay, so business doesn't care about the domain, and it's hard to quantify for our side. What is the business case? Improved cross-sells, reduced inventory costs. So it's all about what 360 can I build to impact these business outcomes. It's not this one. This is not the selling thing on reduce duplicate records, get better quality, better supply, eliminating null fields. They're not going to get excited by that. Okay, single version of the truth. And it depends, please. It depends on what the pain is, but this is more exciting than this. I'm hoping you can see the difference. Okay, get the right stakeholder, the functional stakeholder that is going to have a bonus from doing this better. They are the ones that are going to be committed. Typically not the CEO. Okay, so yes, you must come top down, but not at the top. Does the CEO, are they responsible for a functional area, a business process that's going to generate more revenue? Okay. And then sponsorship versus incentives. Find the stakeholders. So yes, the CFO may sponsor, but we want the functional leader to give us the direction and give us the support to get it right. Agile data management. So please build a data strategy, but not a 3-year data strategy, a 90-day data strategy. Best thing in 90 days. Okay. Understand what's important using a SWOT and then deliver on that. Okay. Then we say, well, what's the best master data approach? 2 KPIs. Okay, KPI 1, KPI 2, and the elevator speech reads something like this that should be in your business case. We are going to drive a percentage increase or decrease on a business KPI by having a single view of X, a domain. Okay, and there may be customer product, there may be a few things. And KPI 2, same thing. Can you justify this? Can you prove it? And can you deliver on those elements? Taking a product management approach, be careful of trying to tackle data literacy at this point in time. I've almost had people respond to me to say, Howard, they don't need data literacy. I need business literacy. I need to understand their business first, and then they'll start talking my data language. Okay, then this is the iterative approach to deliver value over time, constantly reassessing, redoing the data strategy. Please, this concept of a 3-year data strategy doesn't work. You should be talking 100-day data strategies and then reassess. The team. Okay, now this is how we get going. These are the key roles. A reference and master data program lead, a business analyst in terms of the process, a data/systems architect for the data models and the architecture, and then a system admin/business steward. Okay, these are the ones that need to be part of that team. Then the technology MVP. Okay, can we do it with our technology? Do we need to buy technology? And of course, it depends on how many records you're going to have. I mean, if you're talking about millions of customers, well, doing it in Excel or even sometimes in a database and doing all of that integration and cleaning and stuff like that, that's a nightmare. Okay. Scope management. You, the program lead, must relate to the business use case. Be very careful of consultants. And you can see here for them, for consultants, it's all about, well, how much data, how much work, and how long does it be? 90 days is not big for them, right? So they're going to back off that one, and you want to force it into 90 days. So get your scope of work right before you bring the consultants in to adjust the scope of work. Get your stakeholder, get your scope of work, get your 2 KPIs, and that's where you want to go. And then make sure you can fund MDM on their own initiatives. Quick run through subject area coverage. This is, as a data architect, we should know across our subject areas where are the appropriate, which processes or capabilities or creating, reading, updating, deleting our data so we can see where this is happening. Also then using this approach on dependencies, basically what they say is master data should be those areas that are the least dependent. Okay, so there we can see master product management and customer management, no dependencies on them. Product part manager, it's got product management. So start off with your no dependencies, then maybe 1 or 2 dependencies, and then BI flows from that. Okay, so that's it. Any questions, any comments? Love to hear.
Thank you so much. I know we have Atindra.
Yeah. Yes, Atindra.
Yeah, I have a quick question. You mentioned about using master data as fact tables, right? I mean, how did you do that? I didn't get that part.
Sorry, Atindra, I didn't hear using master data as?
Fact tables.
Oh, it's fact tables. Oh, yes. So, Atindra, what I did was, if I look at all of the possible dimensions or perspectives of master data, as an example, location, gender, and stuff like that. So what I then did was I built a surrogate key for the customer, so it had a unique ID, and then I would attach every single dimension of a customer to my fact table, and then I can slice and dice by any dimension of a customer. And then I could count the customers, where their locations or anything to do with the customer, I could then append to that one entity, a single entity instance. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, got it.
So anything that's going to be a conform dimension that is part of a customer, you would connect it to a customer fact table. And it's just, they're your million customers. Each one of them have got a surrogate customer ID. And now you can slice and dice and understand your customer a whole lot better across all of the different perspectives and dimensions of the customer.
Okay, thank you for it.
Yes, Martin.
Yeah, do you mean making your customer a dimension per se, a fact per se? So with how all that's, I don't know, state all this different attributes that the customer has.
Yes. So Martin, remember I talk about that golden profile, and
Yeah,
for a
exactly.
customer, there are many different aspects to a customer, not just that core table. So every single table then is potentially a dimension in your BI environment, and so you can slice every single customer according to any dimension. Is that the question you're asking?
Yeah. Usually, like, I mean, usually you treat the customers at the dimension per se, and whatever your facts of life, you put all the other dimensions related to him into a fact. But I mean, like if like with a customer, the customer has many addresses,
Yes.
cities, and that's it. You
Yes.
you can
So
address it to the customer, so you can find just scanning, like querying the customers. You can create all this information of them, like
correct.
general
So you
address.
have 100%. So you have like roles, you have addresses, you have bank accounts. How many bank accounts does this customer have? What are the different usages of addresses, different roles? When you go into that party model, it's phenomenal. All the different aspects on that portfolio of a customer that gives you lots of insights, and it's typically what the marketing people do to do demographics, firmographics. It's all those ways in which they split up their customers and create segmentation. That's pretty much what you're doing when you use your master data domain in as a fact table in your data mart or a data mart.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Fantastic. Yeah, it was fun. I did it. The first time I did it must have been about 15 years ago, and when I saw it, I thought, I should do this a lot more, not just business transactions, but just to understand the entities. It's amazing the insight you get. Great. Is anybody else? I'm not sure what time we're sitting on. Okay, not too bad. Normally it's a lot worse. So
I have a question of it says don't use domains. If I'm not
yeah,
mistaken, the DM box says that we should be using domains.
yeah.
And it says use
No,
business processes.
yeah. So this is a bit of a holy grail thing that lots of the data architects and the master data people they tend to focus on a domain. For example, even the master data people call it a multi-domain or a customer domain or a product domain, and they tend to treat them independently and almost project programs on their own. Now, what I like about coming from this from a business point of view, as an example, I want to increase sales. Now, I may have multiple domains there, as an example, the customer and the contracts or agreements. So I've actually got two domains. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to go for one perfect domain. I'm going to go for a 45-degree domain on customer and contract. Only that data that's required to deliver on that business process to achieve that value. Okay. And I use that to reduce how many data sources I must integrate, what data quality, what stuff I do there, and then I build everything slowly. Okay, not I'm hyper focused on a domain, and people don't really, and certainly the business people, they don't see what value they get out of just the customer unless there is a customer analytic or a CDP program, but those things take a long time to establish. So what you will always use the underlying model to be a domain model, but you won't build and incrementally build at a domain level. You'll incrementally build by business process within the appropriate domains. Does that help? So we need to talk business value, and we have to talk business value according to business process or business function, not data domains. Data domains, they sort of understand, but they can't always see the value, and you're not going to get one stakeholder getting super excited about doing everything about a customer, but you will get the VP of sales getting super excited about you delivering cross-selling. So it's a way of transforming to being value driven and not domain driven.
Very interesting. Thank you.
I'd love to hear anybody else, those that may have done it before. Veronica, yes.
Yes, you go to my one. I just wanted to know, you had that slide with maniacal on
Yes.
it. And that's
Yes.
quite a weird word to use in terms of data management, where, you know, we don't, it's very emotional.
Yeah.
It's like it's madness. Is that what it's all
Yeah.
about? To try and get things done in 90 days is madness?
Yeah. So what we'll do to get things, and I suppose the challenge we're facing is that in the beginning, I've seen so much resistance to master data management establishment because of the fact that we're pushing so much back onto the business, and we're forcing the business to have a lot more involvement. Now that's a good thing, and that's certainly where we want to go to. But to get that first example of the benefit they get out of master data, to get it and for them to see it, we have to take a very focused view of what we're going to deliver. We can't have a big scope, because then we are needing the business more and more. And what this approach is almost suggesting is, in the beginning, don't use business people. Use some IT people and some of your data modelers just to get the environment set up. Okay, so that's part of the maniacal thing of almost trying to have a skunk job done to be able to show that it works and it delivers value. And for one stakeholder, we can improve if we bring that 360 idea to that stakeholder and show him everything he needs to know about the customer to do the cross-selling. When those lights come on, when he sees it, then he'll dedicate resources, and then we can get more formal in our governance and all those type of things, our technology, our teams and that. But trying to convince them in the beginning that they have to change their lives is hard, and it doesn't work if you don't have a good value driver and a good justification. Okay, or Debbie, you're on mute. I'm not sure if that answers your question. Does it? I mean, it breaks a lot of the rules that we teach on master data, right?
Okay.
Where that whole thing of the data stewards resolving all of the collisions and, you know, having data owners that take responsibility for the domain. We're saying don't do that in the beginning. Don't get involved with that. And there's even a suggestion of, you know, maybe we don't need to do all of the cleaning, and we can show the people all of the warts and all data, because that's sort of what they're dealing with at the moment. They've probably seen it in Excel. So why do all of this heavy lifting in your first one when you're trying to show value?
Okay, thanks.
All right. So please remember, this is getting it increment number one delivered. Iterative increment one across 2 KPIs within the business across maybe 2 or 3 domains and not the 360. Okay. Tips? Everything good?
Yeah. All
All right.
good. And if we have any other questions, everyone's happy.
Very happy.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Did it help you?
It did. And yeah, so I guess almost like when you define data quality as fit for purpose, it's almost saying start with a very narrow scope and say, well,
Yeah.
what this is fit for purpose for these 90 days, and this is what we're going to focus on.
100%. 100%. And I mean, you know what? It was interesting when you, let's say you have customers of 1 million customers, and you take on trying to be seriously accurate about how accurate the customer data should be, and you don't have a good purpose statement, as you just pointed out. How long is it going to take you to clean this stuff? You know, what I mean, now you're saying that every element is critical, and what's the expectation? My goodness, you could be there for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of spinning in circles, not sure what to do.
Yeah. And then maybe like 2 months later or 3 months later, you're still cleaning, and they haven't seen the benefit of it, and the business just keep watching you going further and further down the hole, and with no value coming out. Excellent. Thanks, everybody.